Hey everybody, welcome back to the program. Today I'm counting down my top 10 albums by the Beach Boys, and let me tell you, it was no easy task. As of this taping, they have released 29 studio albums, and not all of them are classics like Pet Sounds. In fact, some of them are downright embarrassing. But what was surprising to me as a longtime fan was the fact that half of the records on my list I had never listened to before I sat down to make this list. So I really want to thank my members on Patreon who voted to make this topic into a video. Otherwise, I don't know when I would have actually listened to some of these records. All right, with all that said, let's get into the video, starting with number 10, Summer Days and Summer Nights from 1965. Now, this was the second of 3 albums they released in 1965 alone. And there's some great songs on here like California Girls and my preferred version of Help Me Rhonda, but it's got some clunkers on here as well. They just don't hit right, or they sound too similar to better sounding songs of their other records. And it's not a terrible album overall, but it's also not a 5-star record, if you know what I mean. It's not perfect, and the worst offender of that, of all the tracks, is I'm Bugged Out of My Old Man. It's the second to last song on here, and it just kills the whole vibe of this record. What's worse is they left off a great song titled Sherry, She Needs Me that's only recently been released. I implore you, check out that track. At number 9, I have Beach Boys' Love You from 1977, and I hate the fact that I like this record so much. It actually annoyed me the first few times I listened to it, but at some point it just sort of clicked with me. And it's not any one song, because there are some dumb songs on here, like Honkin' Down the Highway and the ode to Johnny Carson titled Johnny Carson. But there's just something about the overall presentation of this album that really works. There's an earnest sense of life, sort of the serendipity of life, just admiring the beauty of the everyday. And sometimes it can get really hokey, same with the production. But when you look at it, the sum of its parts, it just leaves you with a very warm feeling. It's like seeing an old friend after a long hiatus, and that's what this record is. It is endearing, it is genuine, it's not judgmental, it's just the guys having fun, and it's sort of bittersweet in a sense because, you know, Dennis wasn't around for very much longer after this record came out, and it just feels like this was the last hurrah. Even though they had records after this was sort of the last of the original gang all together, having a great time and loving life. Coming in at number 8, we have Wild Honey from 1967. Now, this is an interesting record in that it was in direct response to the poor sales, or the poor reception, if you will, of Smiley Smile. And so what they did is they decided to kind of step back away from the more experimental psychedelia elements of that album and create more of a soul R&B record. And I think it really works. It's really quite a good album. It just lacks the standout hits of Smiley Smile. So to me, they're about the same, even though Good Vibrations and Heroes and Villains sort of edge out Smiley Smile for me. Wild Honey is still a great record. In fact, their cover of I Was Made to Love Her really shines with Carl Wilson on the lead vocals, and the backing vocals on Darlin' just are impeccable. Unfortunately, Country Air, A Thing or Two, and How She Boogalooed keep this record at the number 8 spot for me. At the number 7 spot, I have 2020 from 1969. This has got some fantastic gems on here. I Can Hear Music, Be With Me, and the whimsical instrumental, The Nearest Faraway Place. Overall, this has a great album presence, grown-up vibes with some great psychedelia pop and beautiful Wrecking Crew sounds. That being said, there are some duds on here. Cotton Fields is an okay cover, but they don't really do much with it. It just feels like filler. Listen to the original or the CCR cover from the same year. My least favorite is All I Wanna Do. It feels really out of place. What I absolutely love is the inclusion of 2 Smile Session songs, Our Prayer, that flows right into Cabinescence, and it's a glorious way to close this album. They flow so well from one into the other that I prefer them this way. I love how they sound together. And speaking of the Smile sessions, at number 6, I have Smiley Smile from 1967. Now, this is a hard record for me to listen to because it makes me sad. When I hear the singles Good Vibrations and Heroes and Villains, I think about how amazing this record could have been had Brian been able to finish it. And then especially when you hear the songs that were shelved for this release and put on later releases like 2020 and Surf's Up, you go, what? This could have been so fantastic. And I know there's the Smile Sessions, the double LP that was released years later, but even that feels incomplete. Somewhere between this and the later Smile Sessions release, I think is my preferred record for what they had with Brian abandoning the project. I think they put together a very good record, but there are a few songs on here that drive me crazy, like Fall Breaks and Back to Winter, Woody Woodpecker's Symphony. But I do really like Vegetables, Little Pad. There are a lot of really good songs on here. I want to like this album more, and I put it as high as I could on this list. But yeah, it's almost there, and that's why it's at number 6. At number 5, I have Friends from 1968. Oh my goodness, I adore this album. It is nearly perfect, nearly perfect. What ruins it is the last song, Transcendental Meditation. It's an ode to meditation, and it's just goofy to begin with, but on top of that, it's annoying to listen to. It has these blaring horns that kills the entire vibe of this record. Otherwise, it's a beautiful, whimsy, mellow, breezy pop record that has so many great songs on here. Granted, none of them are really big hits that you have heard of, but they're all worth listening to. Some of my favorites include Ann Lee the Healer, the soulful Be Still sung by Dennis Wilson, the Exotica instrumental Diamond Head, and the opening track is, oh my gosh, is a clear inspiration for Weezer. It's funny, as a Weezer fan, I always knew the Beach Boys connection, but it wasn't until I got this album that I really started to hear, oh, that's where they're pulling from. It's not the early stuff, it's not the Surfin' Safari, it's stuff like that song is where Weezer got a lot, or maybe probably Rivers Cuomo got a lot of his melody work. It's just, if you're a Weezer fan, I think you're really gonna dig this album. At number 4, we have Surf's Up from 1971. And again, this is another nearly perfect album. Overall, it has a very mature vibe about it. Like, you can tell the band is trying to move away from their clean-cut all-American image and move into more mature sounds to reflect their current age and having families and seeing their popularity waning, because they had a huge blow, I think, to their ego, moving from Capitol Records, then onto Reprise, and their first album, Sunflower, ended up being their lowest charting record to date. And so I gotta think they ate some humble pie on this album. I gotta say, what keeps this from being a perfect record, in my opinion, is the song Student Demonstration Time. I hate almost everything about it. It really feels, again, out of place on this record. But yeah, other than that, there's some great songs on here, including Disney Girls and Surf's Up from the Smile Sessions. Oh, that is a fantastic, amazing song, and it's no wonder they titled the record after it. And again, it just pains me that that's another fantastic song that was not on Smiley Smile. Man. Anyway, check this record out if you haven't already. I know I hadn't before this list, and I'm so glad I finally listened to this album. All right, now we're coming down to the final 3, and I think you can guess what number 1 is, but we're gonna start with number 3, The Beach Boys' Today from 1965. Now I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but again, this is a nearly perfect album. The last song, I can't even call it a song. All it is a fake interview. It's supposed to be funny, I guess. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that they left off the song Guess I'm Dumb. They actually, Glenn Campbell went on to record it, and there is an instrumental version of what they were working on, but there's no vocals on it, so you have to use your imagination. But even that, even if they just put on the instrumental version on this album, that would have made it a contender for number 2. What I also really love about this album is the fact that they were starting to move away from the car culture and the surf culture that they were known for, and trying to get to more sort of introspective themes, sort of like what it means to be a young person and the trials and problems that you go through. And there's some fantastic moments on this album that unfortunately they sort of skirted away from on their next 2 releases, because this one, not surprising, didn't sell as well as these other ones. Anyway, thankfully they returned to that for Pet Sounds, and really this is sort of seen as the precursor to Pet Sounds, and I feel like they really do complement each other well. You can really see the evolution of Pet Sounds when you listen to this record. At the number 2 spot, we have Sunflower from 1970, and oh my goodness, this is a glorious celebration of psychedelic pop music in the only way that the Beach Boys can. This is a 10 out of 10 album, and it's one I never heard until I made this list, and I can't believe I thought my life was complete without hearing this, because I mean, this is the finest album since Pet Sounds for the Beach Boys, and it bugs the heck out of me that it didn't sell well, because it's so good. I mean, this is a blend of rock, pop, and soul music of that era. So imagine late 60s, early 70s, that kind of style of music blended up and given that Beach Boy harmony stamp. It just seals the deal for me. Every track on here, I can start humming in my head. I just think about it and it's there. And there's even a holdover from Smile Sessions on here called Cool Water, or Cool Water. And even that, as simple as that song is, it is hypnotic. If you only own 2 Beach Boys albums, it should be this record and Pet Sounds. And speaking of which, no surprise, at number 1 from 1966, Pet Sounds. What else can I say? This is a bona fide 10 out of 10 classic album, a must own, the best Beach Boys album, end stop. I mean, so much has been said about this. It has inspired so many other artists, other bands. Some of my all-time favorite songs of all time are on this album. It is an ode to the genius of Brian Wilson and the musicianship of the Wrecking Crew, the studio musicians at Capitol Records. I mean, they, as much as Brian, I mean, they helped to make this album a reality, and it's so very good. All right, everybody, I gotta say this was a really fun list to make, and I'm so happy I had the opportunity to sit down and really listen to those albums that I hadn't heard before, like Love You, Wild Honey, 2020, Surf's Up, and Sunflower. Now, before I sign off, I do want to recommend you check out some albums that didn't make my list but are worth listening to as well, including That's Why God Made the Radio, Surfer Girl, All Summer Long, Carl and the Passions, and Holland. All right, everybody, that will do it for today. I hope my list will inspire you to check out some of their albums that you may have not heard before. Be sure to post your own top 10 down in the comments below. Until then, I want to thank you all so much for watching, but I especially want to thank my members over on Patreon. I am your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching this video. Now, for as little as $1 a month, you can become a member of my Patreon and vote on future videos like these. All you gotta do is click the link right there or in the description below.